Good morning. We're going to start the memorial service for Sandi-Jo Gordon with Psalm 121. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. Esa einai el harim, me'ayin yavo ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai, ose shamayim va'aretz. אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך. הנה לא ינום ולא יישן, שומר ישראל. אדוני שומרך, Adonai tzilcha al yad yeminecha. Yomam hashemesh lo yakeka, ve'yareach balayla. Adonai yishmorcha mikol ra, ישמור את נפשך. אדוני ישמור את צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד עולם. God will guard your soul, your going out and your coming in, now and forever.
A poem by Rabbi Joshua Loth Liebman titled "Death is Not the Enemy." I often feel that death is not the enemy of life, but its friend. For it is the knowledge that our years are limited which makes them so precious. It is the truth that time is but lent to us which makes us at our best look upon our years as a trust handed into our temporary keeping. We are like children privileged to spend a day in a great park, a park filled with many gardens and playgrounds and azure-tinted lakes with white boats sailing upon the tranquil waves. True, the day allotted to each of us is not the same in length, in light, in beauty. Some children of earth are privileged to spend a long and sunlit day in the garden of earth. For others, the day is shorter, cloudier, and dusk descends more quickly as in a winter's tale. But whether our life is a long summery day or a short wintry afternoon, we know that inevitably there are storms and squalls which overcast even the bluest heaven, and there are sunlit rays which pierce the darkest autumn sky. The day that we are privileged to spend in the great park of life is not the same for all human beings, but there is enough beauty and joy and gaiety in the hours if we will but treasure them. Then for each of us the moment comes when the great nurse, death, takes us by the hand and quietly says, "It is time to go home. Night is coming. It is your bedtime, child of earth. Come, you're tired. Lie down at last in the quiet nursery of nature and sleep. Sleep well. The day is gone. Stars shine in the canopy of eternity." We turn to the Psalms. They are most ancient expressions of what is in our hearts. They reflect the deepest feelings of that are timeless in what we experience, no matter what the century is. From Psalm 23. Adonai roi lo echsar, and odesha yarbitzeni al mei menuchot yanachaleni. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai forever. We turn to another ancient text, a text from Proverbs 31. On Shabbat, it is a tradition for a husband to honor his wife by reciting the words from Proverbs 31. And as you will see, I think it is particularly fitting to share it today when I think about how inseparable Mark and Sandi-Jo were just literally last week traveling with our community to Israel, one of so many trips to Israel and so many places that they were together. Eshet Chayil mi yimtza, a woman of valor, seek her out, for she is to be valued above rubies. Her husband trusts her, and they cannot fail to prosper. All the days of her life, she is good to him. For 58 years, Sandi-Jo was good to Mark, and Mark was pretty good to Sandi-Jo. That was when they were agreeing on everything other than politics. As you will hear from Mark, they traveled the world and the life together, raising their daughters and being a part of a community of many communities, literally concentric circles and a Venn diagram of circles in the art community, in the travel community, in the Jewish community, in the medical community, in the design community. She opens her hands to those in need and offers her help to the poor. Adorned with strength and dignity, she looks to the future with cheerful trust. Her speech is wise, and the law of kindness is on her lips. Sandi-Jo's speech was wise because Sandi-Jo was a lifelong learner. She never stopped, whether it was through the Melton program or lectures here at Temple Sinai or around town, or when she and Mark were traveling. She was always learning. And then she would turn and share that knowledge by supporting organizations or participating in the Holocaust Documentation and Education Center's Student Awareness Days, or even here at Temple Sinai, where so many of us learned about Jewish art from Sandi-Jo. Her children rise up to call her blessed. Her husband likewise praises her. Many women have done well, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive and beauty is short-lived, but a woman loyal to God has truly earned praise. And you'll hear from Andrea on behalf of she and Marjorie about Sandi-Jo as a mom, but I want to talk about her being a Jewish woman. Judaism was so important to her, passing it on to her children and sharing its beauty with her grandson. They were Temple Sinai congregants for 40 plus years, and their generosity to our congregation really is unparalleled. High donors for more years than I have been here. They quite literally helped us bring Torah into people's homes by helping us create our Torah to Go program. And I'm sorry I should have brought it out, but tucked in our ark is a small ark, a portable ark that Sandi-Jo and Mark helped us create that allows us to bring a Torah into a family's home, and we brought it into probably 50 families over the years. I think about Sandi-Jo's own love for Judaism, helping her prepare 10 years ago to celebrate becoming bat mitzvah just a few years after the actual event, but no less a joyful occasion. So today, as Proverbs says, we give honor to her work. Her life proclaims her praise. This morning we will hear from Andrea on behalf of her and Marjorie, then Mark, and then our Rabbi Emeritus, Rabbi Kingsley, who knew Sandi-Jo and Mark many years more than I did.
So we're reversing the roles here. Since Marjorie was the big mouth when we were growing up, and I was the shy, quiet one, and many of you have seen my mom and Marjorie as a tour guiding duet, we collaborated on these words that I'll deliver for both of us. And this way there won't be interruptions or simultaneous banter, a family tendency that my mom learned to avert by precluding her stories with, "Let me finish." Art, language, and learning. Those were the lifelong themes and passions of our mother. Her love for art spilled into everything she was involved with. Our childhood was filled with tagging along to museums and galleries and art projects of all kinds, from paper making at the kitchen sink and breaking many blenders, to coming into our school classrooms to share printmaking skills, to making numerous costumes for all members of our family. So many of our memories are filled with her creative spirit, so we'd like to share a few of those memories with you. Her father, Puppet, to us, was her intellectual mentor, and she looked to Grandma Peg for her sense of design, style, and ability to command any stage or setting. She honored them both with the witty, rhyming poems she wrote for the many themed parties she threw while we were growing up. Some of these poems served as the invitation. Others were served up live for guests to kick off an open mic of roast and toast. Like her mother, our Grandma Peg before her, she loved to throw a great party. One of the most memorable was Dad's top secret birthday event, and probably a number of you were there. So I'm going to read just a little bit from that invitation, which was confidential and top secret. So we're preventing Mark's midlife crisis as he thinks of the passing of time. He's not due to crack up till he's 40, so we'll celebrate year 39. She was right ahead of everything. It ends with, now we're counting on you as a member of this crisis prevention team to show we're all in this together and we're only as young as we dream. So guests were invited to dress up as their favorite age. There were flower children and servicemen and medical residents and our grandmother in a gym romper. The two of us were dressed in oversized University of Pennsylvania t-shirts, our grandfather's alma mater, and a prediction fulfilled years later by Marjorie's attending and graduating from UPenn. When we were young, she loved to dress up her little girls in handmade matching outfits that she sewed from white eyelet lace and 70s wild prints. She was excited to fulfill our dreams of making all of our Halloween costumes by hand. Marjorie was a bunny rabbit. I was a Korean princess, and I Dream of Jeannie. While transforming me into Wonder Woman, the sewing machine broke, and so she improvised by stapling me into my costume. I can still remember the scratching from every plastic star on my satin blue bottoms and the stapled padded bra with gold lame eagle across my chest. And she loved to dress up herself, and for costume parties in the 70s, she and our dad went with another couple as the Fruit of the Loom Quartet and the Three Musketeers in a candy bar. And then there was the silent screen costume, where they unrolled silver mylar scrolls from their necks to reveal a large painted close-up of a cinematic kiss. We just loved watching her come up with the ideas and craft them to fit the occasion. So we didn't have a garage like most families in Florida. We had a studio. There was a long table with a huge industrial roll, size roll of craft paper, ever at the ready, and a large chest of drawers full of endless materials, markers, colored pencils, pipe cleaners, and polymer clay. We spent hours in there. And while she wasn't much for the beach, on the one seaside vacation we had, she led us in making plaster relief sculptures from shells and objects we found along the shore and pouring the plaster into holes that we dug in the sand right on the beach. She was always ready to lead another group project. And our parents, as big art supporters, had hands-on involvement with the first Miami Metropolitan Museum of Art, which inhabited the former country club beside the Biltmore Hotel in Coral Gables. As children, we loved running around and discovering hidden rooms around the haunted hotel and vast empty swimming pool that had been abandoned years before this enormous renovation came years later. As honorary curator of prints, one of her responsibilities was organizing the hundreds of slide entries for the renowned Miami International Print Biennial. She enlisted us to assist her in cataloging the submissions, and to make the countless hours more fun, she posted a world map for us to pin the origins of all the artists on, and we began a stamp collection from the envelopes. And although most of you probably know her as a terrible cook, that wasn't exactly the truth. She had a few Asian specialties, including Korean beef bulgogi and Chinese Peking duck, which she served for parties. She saved those for parties. When Pierre and I got married, she planned our dinner in New York City by taking over the Midtown Peking Duck House. It was a very unique and delicious event for guests from out of town that extended our day from the noon ceremony in Central Park to the skylit after party in Brooklyn. She also had a great sense of humor, and when she met my future husband, I knew they got each other when I heard them joking and laughing, catching the irony in situations, and echoing the witty humor that she inherited. She was so used to little girls that when she learned she would have a grandson, she was a little worried that she wouldn't know how to relate. However, she was great with little Nathaniel. San often came up for visits and always had entertaining books and activities to do. When he was obsessed with animals, she would send him videos, and together they laughed over, especially the dog videos, and Jeff Dunham, and America's Got Talent. And she loved telling people about this time when she took Nathaniel to Disney's Animal Kingdom, and he spent an hour talking with a park ranger who was very impressed with Nathaniel's extensive knowledge of animal scat. And that gave them a much welcomed reprieve on the bench. Bookmaking was a fascination that finally brought together two of her gifts, which she passed on to me and Marjorie: writing and visual art. This was something we could all bond over as adults. In 2004, she came upon a bookmaking weekend workshop at the Women's Studio Workshop, so all three of us went to Rosendale, New York, together for a getaway. We learned how to make art, all kinds of art book structures, and this ignited yet another artistic passion for bookmaking. She went on to create dozens of books, take classes with world-renowned bookmaking artists, and become a passionate supporter of the Jaffe Book Center at FAU in Boca Raton. Yet another little-known gem that she loved to take her friends to. I remember a print she made when we were young. It was an etching of a world, and it had whirling figures and words that were like written in script. And it read, "Learn as if to live forever. Live as if to die tomorrow." And she certainly did.
Everything's written down, so I'll be able to read it all. The world said confirm. The world said conform. The world said settle for less. The world said compromise. And no one will know. So I made my own world. That was the sign of the philosophy of my wife, Sandi-Jo, and it hung over her desk for the last many, many years. We met in a Howard Johnson's on the Pennsylvania Turnpike on the way to United Synagogue Youth Camp. We were both very active and regional officers, she in Philadelphia and I in eastern Pennsylvania, Valley Forge area. We began dating afterwards and spent a weekend together at the Atlantic City National Board meeting. For sport, we would heckle the Vegematic guy on the Atlantic City boardwalk, And we got people to step out of the way because, as you know, if you've been to Atlantic City, you know about the rolling chairs, and you could sneak up behind somebody and say, "Watch a chair, please," and watch them jump out of the way. She graduated Moore College of Art in Philadelphia with a major in advertising art and a minor in painting. Her parents moved to Miami Beach in 1960 while we were dating. She studied art at University of Miami after leaving Penn. While at Penn, her first year, she felt she never had to go to class. She had a great time, and she flunked out. My father-in-law, who was a respected Penn graduate of the Wharton School, called up his old buddy, the dean. And the dean said, "I'm sorry, but my son just did the same thing and flunked out. I can't do nothing either." They told her she could come back after a year, but she moved down to Miami. And at the University of Miami Art Department, she studied with Miami's greatest painter of the time, Gene Masson. He was a student of the famous Mexican muralist, David Alfaro Siqueiros. We have one of Gene's paintings at home, which we graciously, he let us purchase at a reasonable price. It hangs in the center portion of our living room. S.J. missed me, and she returned to Moore College of Art in Philadelphia. She had a great group of fellow students, many of whom were very successful. I remember a wedding in Princeton Chapel with French champagne and tuna fish sandwiches. Another classmate was Adrian Vittadini, who married a wealthy Italian count and became a very famous designer. They all acknowledged her talent and were very close with her. Moore sits on the Benjamin Franklin Parkway next to the fountain where my father proposed to my mother. It's next door to the Franklin Institute and down the parkway from the Philadelphia Museum of Art of Rocky fame. Across from Moore now is the new Barnes Museum of Philadelphia, of the great collection of Albert Barnes, of all the world's greatest impressionist art in the world, more than you can find in Paris. Sandi-Jo grew up at the Barnes, where her parents were students of Albert and DeMasia, and you can visit there. The Barnes' great art advisor, who was responsible for Dr. Barnes getting the collection, as you know, was William Glackens. He advised him on all the purchases, and the Nova Southeastern Museum, where Director Bonnie Clearwater sent her condolences this morning that she couldn't be here, remarking on Sandi-Jo's history with art development in South Florida. That's the Nova Southeastern University Art Museum. Following graduation, Sandi-Jo and I married in 1964 while I attended Jefferson Medical College. Now it's allied as Thomas Jefferson University and merged with Philadelphia University. They're also partnering now with Sheba Medical Center, Tel HaShomer, the most well-known hospital in Israel, rated one of the best in the world, and they're partnering to build a new hospital of the future in Liberty, New Jersey. We opened, I came back to the University of Miami for my internship, and we opened Gordon Craig Gallery. It was a graphics print gallery. It was in the old design district in 1967, and there were almost no art galleries in Miami at that time, but there were a few. The art critic for the now defunct Miami News, which was our afternoon newspaper, some of you may remember it. It was a great paper with a great editorial staff. And the art critic there wasn't really familiar with works of art in print and graphics, so Sandi-Jo wrote the reviews, and they were published under the reviewer's name in the Miami News. We were early for visual arts in Miami, and we now have, of course, as you know, several world-acknowledged museums, and Art Basel Miami Beach. We moved to Brooklyn, and during my residency at SUNY Downstate, she worked as a gallery director in Jackson Heights, Queens, where we made a whole new circle of friends. Some of them are on video today watching us. When the Vietnam War ended, I was sent to Seoul, Korea as a military surgeon, and she followed soon after with the children. They were building a country in Korea. She served as the editor at that time of the Officers' Wives Monthly Journal, which was the great cultural magazines about the developing country. While there, we learned the language. We hired the hospital librarian to teach us Korean. Her favorite Korean phrase was "이상합니다," which means "you are very strange," and she used that a lot. We spent the next year in Fort Meade, Maryland, and decided to return to Miami in 1975. While raising our family, we became involved with the Metropolitan Museum and Art Centers in Coral Gables, where she helped develop that whole building at the Biltmore Museum after they sold the Pineapple Warehouse on Kendall Drive, which is now Burger King University. She delighted participating in Christos Surrounded Islands. Ruth Shack was a mentor of hers. By far, her best accomplishment was helping create and direct the Miami International Print Biennial, which helped put us early on the world map in the art world. It was a purchase prize event, and she delighted in going down to the airport to pick up all the art packages which were shipped from behind the Iron Curtain at that time. She picked up the entries at the port. She entertained the judges. At a dinner one night, she corrected the museum chairman, who didn't really understand art or prints, and so as not to embarrass the chairman of Yale's art department, who was our judge that year. State Senator and subsequent Miami Commissioner Gwen Margolis appointed her to the Public Arts Trust, where she rose to chairman, protecting the citizens of Miami-Dade County. That was a forte of hers. She directed and advised the trust on many important installations at public buildings, civic centers, courthouses, and the cruise ship terminals. I remember a time when a world-famous American artist was awarded a $1 million sculpture installation award. As you know, the works are chosen by an advisory committee, and the work is submitted as the building is being started, so that it'll be ready at the completion of the building a year or two later. There were several changes at the foundry that this artist was going to manufacture the sculpture 2 years later, and then he informed the trust that his agreed-upon contract price would be doubled or he would cancel. This sculpture award helped rejuvenate this artist's career. I will not mention his name. When the trust members voiced concern over how they were going to meet his new price demand, Sandi-Jo set them all straight. She reminded them that this was a contract and they were responsible for the public's trust that required them to request a return of his paid fee and choose a new artist. This was done, and the county attorney eventually collected the money that he had been given many months earlier. She was not going to establish a precedent for future episodes. Integrity was her guiding principle. Over the years, she's guided the trust through completing many professional advisory committee projects, and I'm very proud of her in regard to that. Once an outside advisory committee did not recognize the slide entries, I'm going back several years, of the entries for the Arts Center. This was a major elderly modern Cuban artist of the 20th century, Kundo Bermudez. She informed the advisory committee that they had missed his slides and didn't recognize him, and they had to consider him. When he submitted for the project, his glass mural was chosen that now graces the entrance on the wall of the Black Box Theater at the Arts Center, which you can all see, and she was responsible for it. In later years, many of you attended her lecture series here at the synagogue on Jewish artists and her interest in the Holocaust. Her Holocaust paintings have been shown publicly, last, I believe, in Cincinnati. Here at Temple Sinai, she was very active and was an advisor for interior design, including the current pattern of the pews you're sitting in. She was proudest of having served on the committee and advising the competition, design, and maintenance of our Holocaust Memorial, which is directly behind me, behind the synagogue on the grounds. A few years later, when the glass light cover over the memorial light cracked, she searched the country until the artist was not available, so she searched the country until she found an artisan who could make a new glass globe to cover that, and we purchased two, and the synagogue has them. I'm going to dearly miss my brilliant intellectual and talented wife, who really enjoyed repairing the world. I'm going to read to you an email that I got this morning from Amanda Sanfilippo, who's the director of the Public Arts Trust. This is from Michael Spring. Michael is the director of the Miami-Dade County Department of Cultural Affairs. He's an old friend. He's responsible for getting us the new Science Museum, where, if you all remember, was quite a difficult problem until Michael stepped in, despite the generous Frost donation. It's very difficult. I want to share that this is to the Public Arts Trust members. Hi all, I want to share this remembrance with you. It's very difficult to imagine our world without Sandi-Jo Gordon. As chair of the Art and Public Places Trust, she upheld the values of quality, diversity, and respect for artists. You can measure the commitment of extraordinary volunteers like Sandi-Jo by their attention to the big picture, and at the same time their concern for getting the details right. Sandi-Jo always asked the good questions about our work, focusing on impact and excellence. She also conscientiously read the Art and Public Places agenda materials thoroughly and in advance of the meetings, and she could find the smallest inconsistency or the most serious omission, in the rare cases when there was one. This is just the measure of her love for the arts and her dedication to our work. I would look forward to hearing Sandi-Jo's tales of her travels and the absolute joy she expressed in telling me about museums, sculpture gardens, and collections that she visited. She had a real passion for contemporary art, and she reveled in discovering obscure work by well-known artists and new work by emerging ones. She was exceedingly proud of the work of the Art and Public Places program and of the Trust. She accepted and faithfully carried out this enormous responsibility as a member and chair of the Trust, and she would include the work of the Trust in public presentations that she would do, using our program as an example of the right way to commission artists and to care for their work. I knew Sandi-Jo Gordon for almost all of my career in the arts, and am better for her friendship and service. We first met when I worked as a fledgling arts administrator at the now long-gone Metropolitan Museum and Art Center in Coral Gables. Sandi-Jo was deeply involved in recurring print exhibitions and already was excelling as a volunteer extraordinaire. Through the years, her love for the arts and her commitment to the noble concept of making important civic contributions grew. Now, this is her legacy, a cultural community where visual arts thrive and where appreciation for the talent and creativity of our own artists is a given. We are forever grateful for the lasting impact that Sandi-Jo Gordon has had on our lives and work and in our community. Thank you.
Doesn't seem to matter whether I wear them or don't. At the celebration of Sandi-Jo and Mark's 50th wedding anniversary on December 25th, 2014, I wrote a poem, as I am wont to do for dear friends on special occasions. And this is what I said at the end of the poem. When all's said and done, lucky are they who look back 50 years to their wedding day. None of us knows what tomorrow will bring. But this day is special, let its melody ring. That was 8.5 years ago, but the words are frighteningly true. None of us knows what tomorrow will bring. Having just returned from the trip of a lifetime to Egypt and Israel a day or two earlier, Sandi-Jo and Mark went out for dinner and then retired for the night. What followed was the medical episode which was to end her life, despite the heroic efforts by Mark and the medical team which sought to save her. Alas, to no avail. And that's why tradition perhaps teaches Shuv Yom Echad Lifnei Mitatcha. Repent one day before your death. For indeed none of us knows when that day will come. None of us knows what tomorrow will bring. But today we look not at tomorrow, but we remind ourselves of the many yesterdays, as you have been hearing. Too few of them, to be sure, but those of us privileged to be part of Sandi-Jo's life spent in her company. You heard from those who were closest to her. She shared everything with Mark, to whom she was married for 58.5 years. Well, almost everything. They didn't exactly see eye to eye when it came to politics, as Rabbi Litwak said before. Perhaps the simplest way to describe it is she, MSNBC, he, Fox. But they negotiated. That is what married couples are meant to do. And Mark, especially during recent months when Sandi-Jo suffered from some serious orthopedic, neurological issues, was extraordinarily attentive, pushing her around in a wheelchair when walking was too challenging for her, most recently during the Miami mission in Israel. Daughters Marjorie and Andrea were the other objects of her love, as too was her son-in-law Pierre, and especially her grandson Nathaniel. There was seldom a time when we were together, which was frequently in recent years, when she didn't mention Nathaniel and some project that she had in mind for him. Her life, as you've heard, was filled with projects, whether having to do with art and arranging for a lecture about something that interested her at the time, frequently having to do with Jewish subjects, or setting up a tour to see some new exhibit, or being involved with the Jaffe Center at FAU, chairing a commission for art in public places, or even lending her own artistic skills to Temple Sinai, and her aptitude as a decorator, something she undoubtedly inherited from her mother, Peg Gorson. She was always involved in something. If memory serves me correctly, she installed the curtains which are on the inside of the ark, among the other things that she did. And as, again, you heard, she guided the committee that chose and established the Holocaust Memorial that sits in a shaded, wooded area in the back of the sanctuary, and is the site of outdoor services and memorial commemorations. Remembering the Holocaust was one of her passions. She actively served as a facilitator for Student Awareness Days of the Holocaust Documentation and Education Center, which she generously supported. She understood what it means to never forget. Generosity, whether to the Greater Miami Federation or Temple Sinai or the local art scene, was part of her MO and her very DNA. She loved the temple. She loved being Jewish with all that that implied. You have to love being Jewish to name a dog Mitzvah. As an avid student of the Melton program, she took seriously the phrase in the Mishnah, which is part of our morning prayers. Talmud Torah, Keneged Kulam, the study of Torah is equal to all else. Unlike so many B'nai Mitzvah who stopped their Jewish learning after their ceremony at age 13, Sandi-Jo used her adult bat mitzvah some years ago as the occasion to study even more, study which she pursued to her dying day. She used to remind me of a particular incident at an earlier time in Israel, another mission, during which I was her bus captain. I was getting annoyed because the Israeli guide kept referring to the religious people as we passed through the ultra-Orthodox neighborhood of Mea She'arim, as if the rest of us who were Reform and conservative Jews were not among the religious people. I finally said that there were those of us who practiced our Judaism in a different way, but that we were no less religious. And I would appreciate it if the guide would alter his thinking accordingly so that he might include us as also being among the religious ones. That made an impact on Sandi-Jo because, as I said, she often mentioned it to me. I'd like to think that was because she, while far removed from the world of Mea She'arim, thought of herself as a religious Jew. And in truth, she was. Not because she abided by all of the strictures of the Shulchan Aruch, but because she was a woman of faith, who valued Jewish learning, who was kind and truth-loving, caring and creative, supportive of the synagogue and the Jewish community, and the broader Jewish community, and the non-Jewish community as well, financially and emotionally. B'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha, with heart and with soul. If that doesn't qualify as being a religious Jew, I don't know what does. We are in the 29th day of Sfirat HaOmer, the days of counting beginning with the second day of Pesach, in anticipation of the commemoration of the giving of the Torah on Shavuot, the 50th of those days. The period of the Omer is not only to whet our appetites as each day brings us closer to that moment on Sinai when we received Torah, but to remind us to make each day of our lives count. We count the days. we should make our days count. I think it can be safely said of Sandi-Jo Gordon that she made each day of her life count. Fortunate are we who shared our days. Zichrona Livracha, may her memory be an everlasting blessing. And let us say, Amen.
We are going to conclude our service here in the sanctuary with the chanting of El Malei Rachamim. We invite the congregation to please rise.
Malei Rachamim, Shochen Vameromim, Hamatzeh Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShekhinah B'ma'alot Kedoshim U'Teorim Kezohar HaRakia Mazirim Edeni Shemat Sarat Tikva Bat Noach Vevelin Shelcha Leolama Mal Harachamim Yastirea Beseter Kenafav Leolamim Vitzror Chaim Et Nishmata Adonai Hu Nachalata Vetanuach Beshalom Al Mishkava Venomar Amen.
O God, full of compassion, you who dwell on high, grant perfect rest to the soul of Sarah Tikva, Bat Noach Evelyn, Sandi-Jo Gordon, who has departed from this world. Source of mercy, bring her into your presence and let her soul be bound up in the bond of eternity. Be you her possession, and may her repose be peace, as again we say, Amen. I'm going to invite you to take a seat for just a moment. Just a reminder that we will continue on to Bethel's cemetery. Mark is going to give us directions, I'm sure, but following our service, following interment, Mark and Marjorie and Andrea will be receiving your condolences at Mark and Sandi-Jo's home from 2 to 5 p.m. today. They will come back to Temple Sinai for Shabbat services, and then Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday from 3 to 8 p.m. And by the way, 2 to 5 p.m. today, we'll be at the 2600 building. Once you get there, they'll direct you where you're going. Then Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, we'll be at Sandi-Jo and Mark's home from 3 to 8 p.m. 6:30, there will be a Shiva Minyan. You're all encouraged to attend.
So those of you that have been asked to be pallbearers, if you'll come forward, please. Just come right to the casket. So this concludes the services here in the sanctuary. We will be continuing to Temple Bethel Memorial Gardens. May I ask everybody to please remain standing and then follow behind as we pass. In the lobbies are these placards. They hang from your mirror. If you're going to the cemetery, please take one. Turn your high beams and flashers on. The procession will line up around the north side of the parking lot, so just pull over to the north side of the parking lot, wait for motorcycle escorts, and you'll also see the hearse and the limos proceeding. So once again, please remain standing, and as the family and casket passes, follow behind. Placards in the lobbies, high beams, flashers, please. Thanks.